Good evening. I'm Nima Rajan, and this is Forum Daily for Tuesday, December 13th. We start the newscast with a new report on Canada's real estate market. Royal LePage is forecasting the aggregate price of a home in Canada will drop by 1% next year. The real estate company expects home prices to fall to just over $765,000 by the fourth quarter of next year. While it expects prices to flatten in the second quarter, it expects prices to end 2023 on an upward trajectory. Royal LePage foresees homes in Vancouver remaining the most expensive next year. They will dip only 1% to more than $1.2 million. Regina will be the most affordable of the places it studied, where aggregate home prices will fall 1.5% to over $361,000 by the end of 2023. All right, turning to Canada's latest moves in support of Ukraine. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland pledged $115 million at an international donor conference in Paris. Ms. Freeland, who is also Deputy Prime Minister, says the money will be collected in tariffs on Russian and Belarusian products. The money will be used for a World Bank project to repair the electricity grid in Kyiv. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says Canada hasn't closed the door on being part of a military intervention in Haiti or even leading one. Instead, he wants European nations to join Canada in sanctioning Haiti's elites over alleged ties to the violent gangs that are paralyzing the country. Mr. Trudeau says Canada has a long history in Haiti, and he wants to avoid past mistakes as Ottawa responds to a request from Haiti's unpopular government for a military intervention. All right, well, all of this comes as Defense Minister Anita Anand has ordered the military to end its jurisdiction over sex crimes, except in cases where the offense occurs outside of Canada. The minister revealed her order as military police reported they have faced challenges transferring such cases to civilian authorities. Ms. Anand delivered an update to Parliament on the government's efforts to implement the 48 recommendations from a scathing report, which was released earlier this year by retired Supreme Court Justice Louise Arbour. Ms. Anand says the government is now accepting all of her recommendations on how to eliminate sexual misconduct in the armed forces. The Canadian Federation of Independent Business wants the federal government to freeze increases to the Canada Pension Plan and employment insurance premiums coming in the new year. It says the higher payroll deductions will reduce workers' take-home pay and that few small businesses are in a position to increase wages to offset rising premiums. CFIB President Dan Kelly says EI and pension contributions could increase by almost $305, which Canadians could use for groceries or utilities. All right, moving to a new report which finds Alberta drivers are paying much more to insure their vehicles. The Insurance Corporation of British Columbia commissioned accounting firm Ernst & Young to look into the issue and compare rates among those living throughout Canada. The report came out with 30 customer profiles of varying ages and driving experience. It determined Alberta drivers pay far and above what other Canadians do to get behind the wheel. Premier Danielle Smith says her government is to look into the report and see if there is anything they can do to address the insurance rates. The results of a major by-election in Ontario will see a former provincial finance minister head to the federal parliament. Elections Canada is reporting Charles Sousa captured about 51% of the vote for the Liberals. This was in a federal by-election in Mississauga, west of Toronto. The Conservative candidate was second at 37%, and the NDP was a distant third at just under 5%. Elections Canada says voter turnout was only about 26%. On the East Coast, the New Brunswick government is launching a Secretariat of Official Languages to begin operating next year. Premier Blaine Higgs says the Secretariat will oversee the way the government carries out its duties under the Official Languages Act, which establishes New Brunswick as the only officially bilingual province in the country. Mr. Higgs has been accused by Francophone leaders across the province of not being sufficiently committed to bilingualism. Turning our attention to Canada's north, as a new report details how extreme shifts in the Arctic are affecting wildlife and people in the region. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association has released its latest annual Arctic report card. And among its key findings are that Arctic surface air temperatures between October 2021 and September 2022 were the sixth warmest on record. Stay with us. Forum Daily will be right back. And up next, we'll have a look at the holiday season and Canada Helps, a charity that connects Canadians with other charities. So stay tuned. Forum Daily will be back after a short break. It's the time of year when people around Canada and the world get gifting for loved ones and those who may not be as lucky. But how does one go about choosing the right charity to give to, with so many to choose from and with so much need amid these uncertain times? Or maybe you're thinking about fundraising for your own special cause during the holidays. One Canadian organization specializes in connecting donors with their desired charity or cause. Canada Helps says it has facilitated over $2 billion in giving by over 3 million people. Well, joining us now to tell us more about Canada Helps and how it could help you give back during this special season is Nikki Lamont-Chalf, Canada Helps Director of Donor Marketing. Ms. Chalf, welcome to Forum Daily.
Thank you so much. How are you?
I'm doing great, ma'am. Thanks for your time today. Now, Canada Helps is essentially a charity that connects donors with other charities. So it's a very unique concept. So can you tell us a little bit more about how this works?
Of course. So it is an incredibly unique concept. Canada Helps is essentially a charity for charities. And one of our core goals is to connect Canadians easily with access to support the causes that mean the most to them. So donors can access over 86,000 registered charities directly through Canada Helps with multiple ways to, show their support. And as you just mentioned, over our 22-year history, Canadians have donated more than $2.3 billion through our platforms by way of things like one-time donations, monthly donations, running fundraisers, gifting things like charitable gift cards and e-cards, and a few other ways. So generally, as an organization, we're really dedicated to making it as easy as possible for Canadians to make an impact.
Now, I know you mentioned you have thousands of charities to choose from. Can you tell us a little bit more about these charities and the causes that they're connected to?
Yeah, so it's essentially all Canadian charities. We have two main categories that you can support by, so individual charities and cause funds. For the first option, it's very straightforward. Canadians can access the 86,000 registered charities in Canada and donate to them that are covering areas from food insecurity to animal protection to environmental wellness to education and much, much more in between. And we also have cause funds. So they're a bit newer. It's a very innovative way to give. Your single donation gets to make a very broad and lasting impact by supporting a group of registered charities that are all working towards the same cause. So, for example, you can donate to the Indigenous People Solidarity Fund, and with that single donation, you're supporting multiple charities within that fund who are all focused on Indigenous rights.
Sounds like you've got a lot of great options to choose from. So how does one go about choosing a charity to give to?
Well, if you go on canadahelps.org, it's an incredibly user-friendly website. We have many ways to find a charity. You can browse by charity name or keyword. You can browse by category or thematic area if you know what you want to generally donate to. You can browse by cause fund. And when you find a charity or a cause fund that you're interested in, we also have an about section for that charity's profile, so you can get an understanding of their programming and their organization as a whole. A large part of our mission or our goal is ensuring that Canadians find the right organization to donate to, regardless of what it is. So we've made it very easy for them, or we've tried to make it as absolutely easy as possible for them to make their selection out of any charity in the country.
Sounds quite user-friendly. Now, are there any charities or organizations in particular need right now in Canada or internationally?
Yeah, so that's such a big question. And unfortunately, the answer is honestly most of them. There's such a large need for charitable services right now. We did a recent poll that showed that 22% of Canadians, so 2 in 10 of Canadians, say that they plan to access charitable services to meet their essential needs in the next 6 months. And when we say essential needs, we're talking about food, shelter, clothing. That is a pretty drastic increase from 14% in January of 2022. And when we look at parents, that number jumps up even higher. It's 1 in 4, 27% of parents that plan on accessing these services in the next 6 months. And while that need is increasing, the demands of charities and the cost of their programming also continue to rise with inflation. Um, it's a really scary mix of charities costing more to run their programming, people needing charities more than ever, and people also unable to donate to the degrees that they used to donate to. So if Canadians are looking to narrow down organizations to support to, I'd suggest looking at organizations, local organizations in their neighborhoods, in their communities that provide essential services to Canadians that need those essential services and that are going to be accessing them now more than ever. But yeah, I would not want to put giving in a box. I would say if there's a cause that you care about it and you have the ability to donate to anything to the degree that you can.
All right, Ms. Chelf, thank you again for your time today. In the latest developments in the FTX scandal, the firm's ex-CEO has been charged with orchestrating a scheme to defraud investors. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission charged the former CEO of the failed cryptocurrency firm on Tuesday. Sam Bankman-Fried was arrested in the Bahamas on Monday at the request of the U.S. An SEC complaint filed on Tuesday alleges that Mr. Bankman-Fried raised $1.8 billion from equity investors since May 2019. This was by promoting FTX as a safe, responsible platform for trading crypto assets. It alleges that he diverted customer funds to his privately held crypto fund without telling them, and he allegedly used the money to make undisclosed venture investments, lavish real estate purchases, and large political donations. Well, with us now to discuss the situation is Bobby Del Rio, host of the Daily Drop. Bobby, welcome back to Forum Daily.
Thanks for having me, Nima.
So we talked about FTX before, but now Mr. Bankman-Fried has been arrested. So tell us exactly how we got here, Bobby.
Well, it's just the more that everything has been uncovered, basically once they declared bankruptcy, they implemented a new CEO and they just basically went through the books and there's almost no books. It's like there's so many accounting frauds and lies and cons, quite frankly, crimes, that this is way worse than anyone could have imagined. It just looks like Sam Bankman-Fried is probably the biggest criminal in the history of crypto.
Way worse than anyone could have imagined, indeed, Bobby. Now, if I'm looking at this case here, he is charged with orchestrating a scheme to defraud investors. But considering that he was also known for making investments, major real estate purchases, and even political donations, how was someone so prominent and visible able to be so unaccountable in the first place?
You know, it's interesting. I read the 28-page SEC complaint today, and they're very, very good at sort of showing the face that Sam Bankman-Fried exhibited, contrasted with who he actually was. He's just like a big liar, right? Like he was very performative. Like there's so much evidence that he would say one thing publicly and do something else privately. And I think that he was also leveraging those relationships, which were really rehypothecations of customer funds. So he was using customer funds illegally to essentially pay off politicians so that he could curry favor, and so that he could tailor regulations to himself. And there's still more that is yet to be uncovered. Like he's just like, I don't how else to say it. He's the biggest financial criminal in the history of crypto.
So how is all of this impacting the state of the crypto space right now, Bobby?
Well, look, I think that anyone who doesn't have a positive view of crypto continues to have a negative view of crypto. But I think that those of us, who are pretty deeply in the space, I don't think it made much of an impact beyond, oh God, what did FTX do? Stay away. I think people are concerned about the contagion effect. So when FTX declared bankruptcy, like 100 affiliated entities declared bankruptcy. So the contagion effects could be pronounced, and there's still rumblings about who's going to be affected. And I think we're just waiting for the other shoe or series of shoes to drop.
All right, Bobby. So another big question here would be whether crypto is a safe investment right now, or should we consider investing in crypto right now and expect a major comeback in the near future? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, obviously, like I'm not going to give financial advice, but I personally don't think that crypto is any safer or less safe than it was before the FTX collapse. I mean, there's sort of different issues. Uh, Personally, I think that if crypto is something that you were interested in investing in, it's probably better now because there's going to be more regulations. It's going to be way safer. There's going to be more transparency. They're starting to go after the bad actors vigilantly. So, for the same reasons anybody would have invested before, I think there's actually more reasons to invest now.
All right, Bobby, a quick 45 seconds left here, but anything that crypto investors can take away or learn from the scandal?
Do your due diligence, but it's tough. You've got some of the top celebrities and influencers in the world attached to some of these projects, but just know that transparency and due diligence and legality is very, very important. And don't trust anyone. Like, prove it, make them prove it.
Make them prove it. All right, Bobby, thank you again for joining us today on Forum Daily, and we'll see you again shortly.
Thanks for having me.
Take care. All right, we'll be right back. And when Forum Daily returns, we'll be taking a look at the major headlines and news stories from around the world. Over $1 billion in aid is pledged to Ukraine, and South Africa's parliament votes against impeaching the president. We'll have these stories and more top news coming up after the break. Stay with us. Dozens of countries and organizations have put their weight behind an urgent new push to keep Ukraine powered, fed, warm, and moving. An international donor conference in Paris saw more than $1 billion in aid pledges. It quickly racked up substantial promises of financial and in-kind support to counter Russian attacks, which have left millions without heat and electricity. Ukraine's president told the conference that his country requires electricity generators as urgently as it needs armored vehicles and armored vests for its troops. Well, amid this ongoing war in Ukraine, the Kremlin says Russian President Vladimir Putin will not be holding his annual marathon news conference this month. Now, this is for the first time in 10 years. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov didn't comment on the reason behind the break in tradition, but observers point to the Kremlin's uneasiness about a string of battlefield setbacks in its 10-month war. Many commentators say Moscow wants to avoid facing unsanctioned discussion and unpleasant questions about what it calls a special military operation. Moving to South Africa now, where the country's parliament voted against starting impeachment proceedings against President Cyril Ramaphosa. Lawmakers voted 214 to 148 against the move to impeach Mr. Ramaphosa. The move came amid a report that says he held undeclared foreign currency at his farm in 2020. The ruling African National Congress Party, which holds a majority in the parliament, largely stood with the president. This prevented the motion from getting the two-thirds vote needed to proceed with impeachment. However, 4 ANC members of parliament showed their opposition to Mr. Ramaphosa by voting in favor of impeachment, and a few more did not show up for the vote. All right, looking south of our border now, where inflation slowed to 7.1% last month in the U.S., down from 7.7% in October. It is the latest sign that price increases are gradually cooling, but the Federal Reserve plans to raise its key interest rates tomorrow, which will further increase borrowing costs for consumers and businesses. Staying in the U.S., where crews using vacuum trucks have recovered nearly 2,600 barrels of oil and water from a Kansas creek. This follows a leak from the Keystone Pipeline last week. Calgary-based TC Energy says its workers have been operating around the clock, this with multiple booms set up to contain the oil. The leak is the worst in the Keystone Pipeline's history. About 14,000 barrels of oil spilled, and the pipeline is still shut down. All right, turning to the capital of Congo now, where at least 100 people have been killed and dozens injured on Tuesday by widespread floods and landslides, which were caused by heavy rains in Kinshasa. The Prime Minister says officials are still searching for more bodies. Some 12 million people live in the 24 neighborhoods of Kinshasa, which were hit by the floods. Officials said much of the destruction happened in houses built on plots without official permission. In a major scientific breakthrough, American scientists have announced a significant advance in the long-running quest to harness fusion, which is the energy that powers the sun and stars. The breakthrough they announced this morning is significant, but producing power in the real world from fusion is still decades away. The White House science advisor is calling the fusion ignition an engineering marvel beyond belief. Well, it looks like the start of a new era for one of the world's biggest boy bands. Jin, the oldest member of K-pop supergroup BTS, has begun his 18 months of mandatory military service at a frontline South Korean boot camp. 6 other members of BTS are to join the military over the next few years. The band's management agency has said the group will reconvene around 2025. Well, in another major change, the NBA Most Valuable Player Award has been renamed to the Michael Jordan Trophy. The league made the announcement today and unveiled the redesigned award. The trophy carried Maurice Podolov's name for about 6 decades. Jordan won the MVP award 5 times and is a 6-time NBA champion. And there may be some positive developments related to skin cancer. Drug makers Merck and Moderna are reporting their potential skin cancer vaccine performed well in a mid-stage study. The potential vaccine aims to train a patient's immune system to recognize and respond specifically to mutations in a tumor. The companies say a combination of the vaccine and Merck's immunotherapy drug Keytruda led to a statistically significant improvement in recurrence-free survival time. This was in patients with phase 3 or 4 melanoma who had tumors removed in surgery. All right, I'm Nima Rajan, and that'll do it for your look at national and international news for today. Remember, for more news on demand, you can visit our website or follow us on social media. Take care, Canada. We'll see you next time on Forum Daily News.